Hey everyone, it's Triple Mango Threat or Ashley, and today we're going over the cards to add and remove from Vampiric Bloodline. We'll be working with the commander on the box, which is Strefan Progenitor. For 2 black and a red, it's a 3/2 Vampire Noble with Flame. At the beginning of your end step, create a blood token for each player who lost life this turn. Whenever it attacks, you may sacrifice 2 blood tokens, and if you do, you can put a vampire from your hand onto the battlefield tapped and attacking. It gains indestructible until end of turn. This is a really sweet commander because it doesn't matter how much life our opponents have lost, just as long as they have lost life. And being able to just put a vampire on the battlefield tapped and attacking, this is a very powerful ability, not paying a card's mana cost. So in this upgrade video, I'm going to focus on adding cards that want as many blood tokens as possible, so when our commander attacks, we can start dropping vampires from our hand onto the battlefield, and also going wide with our vampires. So let's jump into the cards we're going to add to the deck. Captivating Vampire. For 1 black, we get a 2/2 vampire. It says other vampires you control get +1/+1. We can also tap 5 untapped vampires we control to gain control of target creature, and that creature becomes a vampire in addition to its other types. The neat thing about Captivating Vampire is that these creatures don't have to have haste in order to tap them, because it is the word tap instead of the symbol. This is an expensive upgrade, so if you can't afford this one, that is perfectly fine, and the rest of the cards will be a lot more of a budget option. But this is a very powerful vampire for this deck, so if it's in your budget, you should pick one up. Next, let's talk about Dusk Legion Zealot. For 1 and a black, it's a 1/1 vampire soldier. When it enters the battlefield, we're going to draw a card and lose 1 life. Why I chose this one is because our commander Strefan cares about whenever a player loses life, at our end step, we create a blood token, and we can be one of those players. It's not just our opponents. Next, we're talking about Florian Voldaren Scion. For 1 black red, it's a 3/3 Vampire Noble with First Strike. At the beginning of your post-combat main phase, so after our combat, we look at the top X cards of our library, where X is the total amount of life your opponents lost this turn. Exile one of those cards and put the rest on the bottom of your library in a random order. You may play the exiled card this turn. So since we care about our opponents losing life anyways, I thought this was a great addition to the deck. Also, it's as if we're drawing a card, but just for the turn, whenever we exile one of the cards that we get with Florian. Next, let's talk about Minions Murmurs. For 2 black, it's a sorcery. We're going to draw X cards and lose X life, where X is the number of creatures we control, and since we have at least 35 in the base precon, it's very likely we're going to have a lot of creatures on the battlefield, and we can end up paying 4 mana, 8 life to draw 8 cards. Pact of the Serpent, similar to Minions Murmur, except it's going to cost 1 less, and we have to choose a creature type. So we'll choose vampires, and target player draws X and loses X, where X is the number of creatures they control of the chosen type. So again, similar situation. We'll most likely choose us for the target player, and we'll draw however many cards equal to how many vampires we control. Pulse Tracker. This is a 1 black, 1/1 vampire rogue. Whenever it attacks, each opponent loses 1 life. And this will work great with our commander because we don't care how much life is lost, we just want each player to lose life by the end of our end step. So this will meet that need. We'll get 3 blood tokens at our end step, and each opponent lost 1 life. Same with Vicious Conquistador. It's the same exact thing, except it's a vampire soldier. Whenever it attacks, each opponent loses 1 life. And the last card we're going to add is Vampire Socialite. For black and a red, it's a 2/2 Vampire Noble with Menace. Whenever it enters the battlefield, if an opponent lost life this turn, put a +1/+1 counter on each other vampire you control. As long as an opponent lost life this turn, each other vampire you control enters the battlefield with an additional +1/+1 counter on it. This is a very powerful card, and we want all of our opponents losing life, and so since we're already accomplishing that, we can have a lot of counters on our vampires, and this also has Menace, so it's going to be a little bit harder for our opponents to block this. Now, the cards I'm going to be removing from the deck is not what you have to remove, but I'm going to remove Andi's Ravager. For 2 and a red, it's a 3/3 Vampire Berserker. It has to attack each combat if able, and whenever it attacks, we have to discard our hand and then draw 3. It also has Madness for 1 and a red. That means we can discard this into exile, and when we do, we can cast it for its madness cost. So instead of 2 and a red, we can pay 1 less, which is 1 and a red. I will personally remove this because, in my opinion, I don't think this fits. Yes, it's a vampire, but the card is forcing itself to attack each combat. We have to discard our hand and then draw 3. Which, this is nice if we have no cards in our hand, but the problem is, I don't think we have enough madness cards to really make this work. So you may want this in your deck, and that is completely fine, but for me, I'm going to be taking this one out. The next card I want to remove is Avacyn's Judgment. For 1 and a red, it's a sorcery that has Madness, X, and a red. Avacyn's Judgment deals 2 damage divided as you choose among any number of targets. If this spell's Madness cost was paid, it deals X damage, divided as you choose among those permanents and or players instead. Now, I forgot to mention this, but the blood tokens we get from our commander, we can pay 1 and tap them, discard a card, draw a card, so I can see why they put the Madness cards in here. I just think the cards I'm adding are going to be better than the ones I'm taking out. So if you really want this card, I really encourage you to keep it in here. Bloodlord of Vazgoth for 3 and 2 black. It's a 3/3 vampire warrior with Bloodthirst 3. This means if an opponent was dealt damage this turn, this creature enters the battlefield with 3 +1/+1 counters on it. It has flying, and whenever you cast a vampire creature spell, it gains Bloodthirst 3. So I replaced this card with Vampire Socialite. Instead of putting 3 counters on the one vampire that we cast, this is going to put a +1/+1 counter on each other vampire we control when an opponent has lost life this turn. So same sort of deal, it cares about our opponents being dealt damage, but the mana cost for Vampire Socialite, in my mind, is going to be a better return, and also, I'm focused on going wide, so Bloodlord of Vazgoth is a great card, but very specific for making one creature really big multiple times. I just went for +1/+1 counters on each of my creatures. The next card we're removing is Bloodsworn Steward for 2 and 2 red. It's a 4/4 vampire knight with flying. Commander creatures you control get +2/+2 and have haste. I think this would be a great card if we really cared about stealing commanders, which we can do with Captivating Vampire, but this is just like a 2-card combination if that even happens. If we cared more about taking our opponent's creatures, this would have stayed in the deck. Blood Tithe Harvester for black and a red. It's a 3/2 vampire. When it enters the battlefield, we create a blood token. We can tap and sacrifice this to have target creature get -X/-X until end of turn, where X is twice the number of blood tokens you control. Activate this only as a sorcery. Now, I didn't like this one. Yes, it's on the blood token theme, which is nice, but I didn't think it was that powerful. If it would have done that for a player, that would have been really cool. But since it's not, I'm taking this one out. Crimson Honor Guard for 3 and 2 red. It's a 4/5 vampire knight with trample. At the beginning of each player's end step, it deals 4 damage to that player unless they control their commander. So I took this out because I would have rather have Vicious Conquistador and Pulse Tracker just dealing each opponent 1 damage instead of dealing 1/4. That way we're getting as many blood tokens as possible. Next we're talking about Stromkurt Condemned. For 2 black, it's a 2/2 vampire horror. We can discard a card. Vampires you control get +1/+1 until end of turn. We can only activate this once each turn. Again, this works really well with Madness, and if you want to go that route, this would be a great card for you to keep in the deck. I'm taking this out of the deck because Madness is not my main focus. The last card we're going to remove is Vampiric Dragon for 6 black red. It's a 5/5 vampire dragon. It has flying, and whenever a creature is dealt damage by Vampiric Dragon this turn, put a +1/+1 counter on Vampiric Dragon. It also has 1 and a red to deal 1 damage to target creature. So this creature gets really big, and it's a flyer. And yes, it'd be nice to just put it onto the battlefield tapped and attacking, but I really care about just making those blood tokens so we can put even more vampires onto the battlefield. Thank you all so much for watching. If you'd like any of these cards, you can use the TCG link down below to purchase these cards, and you'll be helping out the channel when you do so at no additional cost to you. Thank you to the patrons who help support this show. You can also help support this channel to see your name at the end of these videos, and you get rewards as well. Be sure to comment down below and subscribe for more Mango content. I'll see you all in the next one.